Hello, friends. Welcome to the Cold War Prepper. And tonight we're doing U.S. Civics and the U.S. Government Intro 101. Thank you for being here. If it's the first time you've watched, please consider subscribing, and I would greatly appreciate the like button as well. We'll wait a couple minutes here. It usually takes a couple seconds for get a couple people in. Right now, I only have one person on. And so we'll wait for that announcement to go out and have people join us. Hello, Sumi. Hello, Diana, too. Welcome. But for those of you who are new, we are using the high school civics book, American Government. And so it's kind of using that as a resource. I'm doing most of my readings of the Constitution from the Pocket Guide. Do me a favor. Your local representative, your local or your senator, either one, send them a lesson. They will send you one of these for free. Yeah, you need to have one of these with you at all times. I have a bag full that I got from my congressman, and I just go out and pass them out on the streets and ask people to please read it, because it's one of those things that people think they. Will Rogers said it best, it's not what you know that gets you in trouble. It's what you think you know that just isn't so. And so there's an awful lot people think about this document that isn't so. You need to read it and find out what it is. And then, of course, there are subsequent Supreme Court interpretations that further explain it and things like that. Like last week, we talked very specifically about 6 Supreme Court decisions that defined. Remember that in Article 2, it says that the president must be a natural-born citizen. So there are 6 different Supreme Court decisions that define what is a natural-born citizen. So, you can get into these things, and it's very, very interesting, and you need to really study it and really understand it. So we're really getting into that. So tonight we're going to be doing basically Articles 4, 5, 6, and 7. Let me see. We've got Sumi Katzens in prepping. Good evening. Little Lone Prepper. Great to see you. Stray Kitten. Butch Graves. Gosh, look at all these. Okay, we're getting there. We're up to 6. So tonight we're going to do basically 4 through 7, Articles 4 through 7, and then next week we're going to start on the Bill of Rights. We're only going to do the first 4 because I have a feeling we won't be able to get too much more into that 1 hour if we go into the first 4, because there are some very peculiar nuances about the Bill of Rights, and I think a lot of people misunderstand it. For example, we try to apply the First Amendment that says Congress shall make no laws abridging the freedom of speech. So people have taken that and turned it into a mantra and say freedom of speech. Can YouTube tell you can't say that on our platform? Absolutely. Remember that caveat. It says Congress shall make no laws regarding the abridgment of the freedom of speech. Okay. It doesn't say anybody else. It just says Congress. So that was to so that you couldn't have some of the political rhetoric being suppressed by one side over the other. And we're seeing that done clandestinely right now. But but that's the intent of that. That's Congress shall make no laws, not companies, not states, not anything else. It's Congress. Okay. So, we get into little things like that, and you're going to find out that a lot of things you think you may not really know, that because there are some caveats to that. Okay, we're up to 9. So let me get my reading glasses. Let's go ahead with Article 4. Full faith and credit shall be given to each state in the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. So if one state does something, another state has to recognize that as being valid. And the Congress may, by general laws, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effect thereof. Section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to the privileges and immunities of citizens of the several states. So basically, we all have the same rights. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or any other crime who shall flee from justice and be found in another state shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction for the crime. So this is basically, if I commit a crime in Texas and cross the border into Oklahoma, then Oklahoma has an obligation to extradite me back to Texas if Texas demands that I be expatriated back to Texas to stand trial for that crime. No person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall in consequence of any law or regulation therein be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. Okay, so a lot of times in court they'll say we're going to fine you $5,000 and 400 hours of community service. So your community service, let's say, is going to be to, let me see, Parks and Wildlife. You're going to give 400 hours service to Parks and Wildlife. So if I'm basically a free person, all I have to do is pay that money and do my 400 hours of service. But if I decide I don't want to do the 400 hours of service and I leave the state, then the same thing. Those 400 hours are still there. I have to be expatriated back to Texas in order to complete those 400 hours of work. Cats and prepping, I think that's a great idea. We used to have chain gangs. We used to have all kinds of stuff. But somebody in their legalistic, righteous mind, when we get into the amendments, it says, as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and get it here. We'll read it. Because they use this to say that that they can't pick up trash. Let me see here. It's in the Fifth Amendment, I'm fairly sure. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of grand jury, excepting cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia. No person shall be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or jeopardy without due process, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That's not what I'm looking for. Here we go. Article 8, Amendment 8, that's the one I'm looking for. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishment. So somebody somewhere made the determination that sanitation work, picking up trash, etc., is cruel and unusual punishment. And so they can't be forced to do that anymore, if you can believe that. That's crazy. But anyhow, I think that would stop a lot more crimes if we forced them to do that. Yep, cats and prepping, got it. Cruel and unusual punishment. Okay. So Section 3, new states may be admitted by the Congress into the Union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without consent of the legislatures of the states concerned, as well as of the Congress. So let's say Texas and Oklahoma wanted to merge into one state. That requires three things. Number one, Texas has to approve it. Number two, Oklahoma has to approve it. Number three, the Congress has to approve it. So we've got this separation element going on in the eastern part of Washington and Oregon, where they're trying to split off and be united with Idaho. And so that's going to require first a successful secession of the eastern part from each of those two states. Then it's going to have an authorization by each state as well as Congress for that seceded area to be incorporated into Idaho. That is not going to happen. That is just not going to pass the public muster. Here's the key. I was talking with a high school civics teacher after church on Sunday, and we were talking, and she may come on here, but she has to think of a good name to use so she doesn't identify herself, because sometimes teaching the truth can get you in trouble. And but she watched the replay and she said, "Man, yeah, you got it. You're onto it." And So I forgot where I was going with that. But anyhow, okay. Oh, I know where I was going with that. The whole purpose of the Constitution is to move things slowly. We don't want impulse laws in the U.S. We want constant deliberation, acceptance. We want that move towards the middle. Okay, we want that move where we have an element representing the minority included in the decision with the majority, so that then we have some sort of reconciliation between the two elements of the country. And we've always had this division. And we knew that when we wrote the Constitution. We had the Federalists and we had the Tories, and we had, this has been constant in our country. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, they were constantly at each other as to whether we were going to use the Massachusetts style of a government, or we were going to use the Virginia style. I mean, so this has been there since we wrote the Constitution, and that's why they wanted it intentionally to be a very slow changing document. And we wanted the laws that were subordinate to the Constitution to be just as thoroughly thought out, just as thoroughly accepted, so that both sides are agreeing to them. So, when Harry Reid suspended the rules and did away with the 2/3 majority in the Senate, that broke all of 200 years of tradition. That the whole thing of the Congress is slow moving. We want as much agreement as possible. There's a fantastic video. I'll put it in the show notes. There's a fantastic video, 5 minutes long, and it's the 5 basic forms of government. And it talks about how with democracy, it's easier to describe it as mob rule. Because, as long as 51% of the population wants it, then that's what the rule is going to be. So if I decide today, another example is they say, if you have 2 wolves and a sheep, and you have a democratic country, and they say, what do you want to eat for dinner? And 2 wolves say, well, we want to eat the sheep. Majority rules, right? Whereas the sheep has no protection. In a republic, the sheep would say, wait a minute, I have rights. You can't eat me. Okay. And so we have to have a higher majority, and I have certain rights to protect my life, etc. So that's kind of gets into the difference between a republic and a democracy. Republics still have a vote, okay, but just that the minority is protected by certain rights against abuse. So now we have inmates sitting around useless 24/7 and have to beg private groups to pick up the trash in most places. You're absolutely right, Theoxorus. Absolutely right. Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing. Once you cross over, I think that's the Cascadia Mountains. The eastern half of both Washington and Oregon are far less densely populated, totally different climate. They're a lot more conservative than is the western portion on the west side of the Cascadias, and it's just they are basically different states. So that's just the way it is. Wow, that's phenomenal, Theoxorus. I've seen those. Yeah, and then I've seen some of the stuff they've done down inside of them as well, and just unbelievably gorgeous. Okay, Section 3, Paragraph 2. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. Nothing in this Constitution shall be construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or any particular state. So they can declare things like possessions, American Samoa, the Marshall Islands, the American Virgin Islands, and things like that, the District of Columbia. So we've got all these different set-asides that are not states, but the government still has the authority over those. It used to be the Canal Zone, the Panama Canal Zone, until we gave it back to Panama. So there are all kinds of different areas where the U.S. government can exercise its authority. Now, this is a quote. This is one I have highlighted. So the only time any form of government is mentioned in the Constitution is this next paragraph. And Section 4.4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall and shall protect each of them. I need my glasses back on. And shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. So this does three things, okay? Number one, the federal government has to guarantee every state has a republican form of government. Now, we're not talking about the party. We're talking about the form of government, which means that it is a form of democracy with rules, a constitution, a state constitution that guarantees rights. So even if you're accused of something, you have the right to defend yourself. You have a right to a trial. You have all those different rights. So the U.S. government has an obligation to ensure that the state governments provide those rights to their citizens. Okay. Part two, and this is one that's really sticky right now, and shall protect each of them against invasion. So we currently have an invasion of illegal immigrants, and that's what Governor Abbott is using to build the border wall, the Texas border wall, to protect us against the immigration of illegal aliens who are in contravention to our existing law that the current president just refuses to enforce. And so what should happen is the federal government should be assuming that responsibility at the border to keep those people from crossing in the first place. Then Texas has the right to say, we want you to protect us. And so since they have failed to do it just by observing it, and since they have failed at the governor's request to do their job, then Texas has to assume that responsibility itself. And Arizona is kind of doing the same thing. California and New Mexico would say, bring them on. So just different ways. And then also, the states can ask for the president to assist them in protection against domestic violence. And that's where they would call up the National Guard, basically, to quell riots and things like that. So they got to be protected against foreign invaders. They got to be protected against internal riots by the federal government. Let me see what we got going on here. Isn't that the truth? Although I have met some Californians, and when I say, where are you from? They say, California, we're not one of those, and so they make sure that we understand that they're not one of the people who are coming here to Californicate Texas. So, hello, Cindy, welcome. I have a feeling that Cindy is the one that I talked to after church on Sunday. Yes, I do consider it an invasion. Okay, Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, now this is a critical one. I want you to really understand this, and I got to go get a book. We had our every 2 weeks we have our St. Vincent de Paul mandatory meeting that we have to go to, and so discuss cases. And tonight we're talking about the Giving Tree. We're sponsoring, 45 families for Christmas this year. So, and we're short a little bit of money. So, how are we going to get that money to take care of these 45 families? But anyhow, so I wanted to get this book and have it over here to show you, and I forgot to do that when I ran into the house and got here to set up what we're doing tonight. Oh, by the way, I also gave them a check for $150 because I got my deposit I made $450 from Amazon and YouTube combined from your purchases. Thank you very much for that. And then so I made $450. So I gave $150 Saturday to the Caring Place. And then I gave $150 tonight to St. Vincent de Paul, the charity. So that means that so far we've given $300 of that $450 out. Probably more of it will go out to different places because especially during the holiday seasons and people being caught up in the economics of the current world and just maybe a teddy bear for a kid or something. We'll see what happens. But anyhow, so let me go get that book real quick. Okay, since we're talking about it, this is an outstanding book. And, so Mark Levin has, I think there's 17 constitutional amendments that he proposes in this book. Let me see. No, 11. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15 amendments. So he's got 15 different amendments that he recommends in here that he would like to see added to the Constitution. So those are, because we're going to talk right now about how to do that. Restoring the American Public, an amendment to establish term limits for members of Congress, an amendment to restore the Senate. So what happens is, we'll talk about that when we get into the amendments. But remember, in section 1, article 1, we have the establishment of the Senate, and it says the Senate will be appointed by the state legislatures. Okay, and that's what basically gives the 10th Amendment its full authority. But then we had, I believe it's the 17th Amendment, changed that and moved the Senate from being appointed by the state legislature to being elected by the people. Let me check that and make sure I have that right. 17th. I think it's the 17th. Yeah, the 17th Amendment changed that so that instead of the legislatures appointing the senators, so that the senators now represent the state, okay, the 50 states, they now represent the people through election. So it's just another House of Representatives, basically, just a glorified one. He'd like to see it returned back to where the states have their authority again. And an amendment to establish term limits for Supreme Court justices, a supermajority legislative override. So basically, let's take one that was just here in the Supreme Court recently, the Dobbs decision. Dobbs decision. So the Dobbs decision basically said that the Roe v. Wade was made outside the purview of the Constitution, that had always been a states' rights issue under the 10th Amendment and should have never come to the federal courts in the first place because it doesn't fall under the purview of the authority of the Constitution. So let's say that the Congress disagrees with that. Well, the amendment that And so right now, the Supreme Court is acting under the authority of the Marshall decision. It's not the Marshall decision. I'll think of it. I talked about it last week. 1813, I think it was. Marbury versus Madison. Supreme Court decision that gives the Supreme Court ultimate authority in deciding the Constitution. Marbury versus Madison is the Supreme Court decision. And so if we take a look at that, right now, anything the Supreme Court says is supreme, okay? Can't be countermanded. Well, so what Mark Levin is proposing is a supermajority of the Congress could override a Supreme Court decision. So then if they disagree that much with the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade, then they could go in and with the supermajority overturn the Dobbs decision and restore the Roe v. Wade decision. So that's what he's proposing, is that there be an opportunity for Congress to either rewrite it or override it with a supermajority vote. 2 amendments to limit federal spending and taxing. So one of those would be a simple payroll tax, and the other one would be a zero balance budget, is what he's amending. He's proposing an amendment to limit the federal bureaucracy and their authority, an amendment to promote free enterprise, an amendment to protect private property, to grant the states authority to directly amend the Constitution. So that would be right now you have to have the Constitutional Convention. A lot of people mistakenly call it the Convention of States in order for the states to begin the process of an alternate process of amending the Constitution, or it can be initiated in the Congress and then sent out to the states for ratification. So the ratification process would pretty much be done if you had the Convention of States. So how do we do that a little bit more amicably? So authority to an amendment to grant the states authority to check Congress. So if Congress came up with a law, let's say right now they want to have this assault weapons ban, and then they put it out as a federal law. Well, if the states got together and the states legislature said, that ain't going to happen, and 2/3 of them said we aren't going to enforce that law, then they would basically have the right to nullify that law. It's what he wants to happen. And then finally, an amendment to protect the vote. With proof that you're eligible to vote and all this kinds of stuff. Speaking of which, there's something like girls. There's something I think a lot of people have a problem with understanding the difference between. There's an absentee ballot and there's a mail-in ballot. So when you talk about the absentee ballot, as in the military, I voted absentee all the time. So what I had to do was I had to take my ballot and open up my ballot in front of a commissioned officer who acted as a notary. So what he would do is he would check the name on the ballot on the outside envelope of the ballot and make sure that it matched my ID card. Then he would hand me the ballot inside of that envelope. Okay. So then I would take that ballot, fill it out the way I wanted to in his presence. He didn't pay attention to how I did it. I just had to do it in his presence. Then I folded it back up, gave it to him. He gave me an oath, and I took the oath saying that this is true and correct, and I'm the person that I claim to be. And then he put that inside the envelope, inside a plain envelope. That plain envelope got put inside of a notary envelope, and the notary envelope was where he notarized it by his commission, saying, I have proven that the person who the person who is authorized to vote is the person who voted. So he's acting as a notary saying, I have a right to vote and I voted, and he observed me do it and I proved my identity. Then all that gets put into another envelope and that gets mailed off to the voter place, the polling station that would be appropriate for me. Now, that's a absentee ballot. The vote by mail ballot isn't that way. You just get your ballot in the mail, fill it out, and roll it up and put it back in. So there's no proof that you ever proved that you were eligible to vote in the first place. So that's why he wants to do away with these mail-in ballots, is because there is no proof that you were eligible to vote. There's also no way to prove that I didn't vote 300 or 400 or 500 times. So we want to, if we're going to have mail-in ballots, we need to have them the same way we have with the absentee ballot, and that is proof that a person is on the registered rolls, proof that they are the person who is actually doing the voting, and proof that I've only voted once, and in only one area as well. So I can only vote in Texas. I can't vote in both Texas and California and all that kinds of stuff. So talking about those amendments, okay, so let's talk about Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or in the applications of the legislatures of 2/3 of the states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the states. So it takes 2/3 to get it in, 3/4 to ratify, okay? As the one or other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which shall be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses of the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So everybody has to have at least 2 senators, okay? Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. So remember, we had the Confederation of States, and then that was replaced by the United States, which was the Constitution, okay? So we had the Articles of Confederation, had the Confederation of States, until such time as we had the Constitution. So any debts that the Confederation of States, hello, Muskoka Oma, and David Lynn, welcome. So any debts that the government had for the Revolutionary War, those kinds of things, were still considered to be valid and to be assumed by the United States government. So this Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made on or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. So I'll get into this in just a minute. This is really a tricky one here. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. So the Supremacy Clause says that anything in the Constitution, any federal law, overrides any state or local law. Okay. Anything in the Constitution or laws of the state to the contrary notwithstanding. The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So I tell you, I take the oath very seriously. I still remember mine, and I took it on January 16th, 1970. It says, I, my name in full, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. This gets me emotional, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me in accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. So that's the oath, okay? The oath is taken to the Constitution. So no matter what anybody tells you, my oath, my obligation is to this document. And so that's the supreme law of the land. But I want to go back to this supreme law of the land. There's a couple things that we got to understand here. The law of the land says that marijuana is an illegal drug. Okay, and then we have all these states saying, no, it's not. We're not going to enforce it. And so what happens is we now have federal government, supreme law saying, yes, it is. State law saying, no, it's not. So a federal law enforcement officer in the state has the obligation to arrest on behalf of the federal law. Okay. A state law enforcement or city or county or whatever has the obligation to enforce state and federal, but federal is the supreme, even though they're being told, hey, we're not going to do that in this state. So that's where we have a lot of contention. There are a lot of sheriffs that say, no, we're going to follow the federal law. And then there are a lot of sheriffs that say, no, we're going to do what we're told, like especially in California. I just read your comment, Cats and Prepping, and that's a great question. I'll give you a good answer here in just a minute. Another one that's happening right now is President Trump is being tried in Fulton County, Georgia, for attempted overturning of a state's federal election. That is, that somehow or other he manipulated or attempted to manipulate the votes and the electors from the state of Georgia to the 2020 federal election. And so they want that trial to start August of 2024. Well, hello, Princess Cricking Butt. Welcome. So what happens, I want to highlight this one because it's a very important question I want to come back to. So here's the thing. President Trump's defense team, the prosecutors, want the trial to start August of 2024. Okay, so they're going to hold them basically until February 2024 and then go to trial February 2024. President Trump's defense attorneys are saying, wait a minute, that's interfering with the federal election because that's going to be right at the height of that pre-November 2024 election. So August, September, October are primary campaign months. And so that's you're interfering with the federal election, and the Supremacy Clause comes in, and you can't interfere with an election. That's what you're accusing the president of doing. And now you're doing it yourselves by just the date that you're establishing the trial. You're interfering with an election. You're trying to sway people's opinion based on when you're holding the trial. So what the defense is saying is because it's a violation of the Supremacy Clause, and the judge is kind of in agreement with the defense. And right now we'll see. They're supposed to make a ruling here in the next week. And the prosecutors say, "Oh no, we're not interfering with the election at all. This is he's free to campaign all he wants." And so the defense came up with this thing. They said, "Wait a minute, if the trial goes on, okay, and we haven't had a verdict by election day, and he becomes the president-elect, by law, okay, the president cannot be held for violation of a state law while he is in office, okay, or elected to office. So that basically means from election day, the second Tuesday in November, until he exits, if elected, we got to say that part, that's a caveat. If elected, he cannot be tried for those crimes until after he leaves office, which would be January 29. So then January 29 is 9 years after the whole thing happened. And the statute of limitations is 7 years. So basically, he wouldn't be tried. So if they really think that there was a crime involved, they need to start the trial now, so that it doesn't interfere with the election. And otherwise, if it's not completed by the time the election happens and he wins, that's that caveat. And if he wins, then he would be outside the scope of the what's it called? I just said it. That's what I get for being 71, right? Oh, well, you know what I mean. Go back and do the replay of what I said. Okay. So could an amendment negate or eliminate one of the existing amendments? So my answer to that is it's already been done once. If we take a look at I think it's the 18th. Yes. 18th Amendment says, after 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within the importation thereto, into the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. So this is called prohibition. So this was passed in 1919, okay? And they said, no more alcohol. So that was the Roaring 20s, remember? So then that was repealed. So we have the 23rd, I believe it is. Let me see. No, 21st. I'm sorry, 21st. So the 21st Amendment passed in 1933, about 22 years later, said, no, we're doing away with that other one. That other amendment no longer exists. So yes, you can repeal an amendment that you have passed in the past. Just the same as Dobbs' decision overruled Roe v. Wade, you can have an amendment to the Constitution which overrides a previous amendment. And remember that we've had cases, especially in the case of the 27th Amendment. Let me see, 26th Amendment. The 26th Amendment basically repealed or set aside a law that says if you're 18, you have the right to vote. Okay. Up until that time, most states had set it at 21. So the Supreme Court, or the amendment to the U.S. Constitution, overrode most of the state constitutions that set the voting age at 21. So yes, very good question. Thank you for asking. That's a very good one. Okay, now we're back down to the articles, and we've only got one or two left. How are we doing on time? I think I'm doing it pretty good on time. Okay. Okay, last one, Article 7. The ratification of the convention of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. Done in convention by unanimous consent of the states present the 17th day of September, the year of our Lord, 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th, in witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names. So then it's signed. So basically what it says is that once this was written as a draft document, they sent it out to the states. So there were 13 states. So they needed 2/3. So 8 out of 12 is 2/3. 9 out of 13 is 2/3. So they said, we have to have 9 states ratify this before it can be adopted as the Constitution for all 13 states. And that's kind of where it was left. Okay. So we've gone through all 7 articles. Let me see if I've made any major boo-boos you all have caught. Glasses off there for reading that. I think next year is going to be. I think it's starting to get interesting now. I'm even wondering if we're going to have elections next year. You probably, cats and prepping, I think that's a very astute observation. You probably won't notice the feds, especially under this administration, doing anything to upset their support base. Okay. And remember the grow houses in Washington, that the Washington is a supportive state to the president. So I don't think he's going to allow DEA or anybody else to go in there and enforce federal law. Yes. So usually at the city and county level, and then it depends upon your state constitution. For example, here in Texas, our state constitution also has us elect our Supreme Court justices, our state Supreme Court justices. So, for example, Senator John Cornyn, prior to being elected to the Senate, was our state Supreme Court justice, and so he was our Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. And so, yeah, we elect our judges here in Texas, the state judges, the federal, the local judges, city, county, and state. However, anybody in the federal system, so you've got the Supreme Court, then you've got the appeals court and the federal courts, the district courts, then you've got, so all of those are federal courts enforcing federal laws. Those are either those are all appointed by the president, and then have to have senatorial approval for them to assume those positions. So that's all those positions. Now, when we talk about that, what we're saying is, remember in Article 3, the justice system, that it says that the justices are appointed and ratified by the Senate. Now then, Article 1 says that the Senate has the right to create inferior courts to the Supreme Court. So that's where they come up with the appeals courts and the district courts and things like that. And but they follow the same rules as the Chief Justice and the other justices of the Supreme Court. Oh, I do too. My favorite is, and I'm having those senior moments tonight. I think it's the prednisone I'm taking. I like Vivaldi, the Four Seasons especially. Johann Pachelbel, that's mine. Johann Pachelbel's Canon in D minor. Oh, gosh, yeah. All right. Statute of limitations. Thank you, Cats and Prepping. Thank you. Appreciate that. See, I love you guys. You keep me straight. Take care, Muskoka Oma. Please drive carefully. You're too valuable to us to lose. We need for you to get home safe. So I was the as the intelligence analyst, when you're in the operations tent, one of the things they have you do is monitor the radios. So the operations officer, we had a battalion S3, and he came up and he told me, hey, I can't hear myself think with all that noise. Put your headphones on. And I said, okay. I said, which one do you want me to listen to, sir? Because I had the division intel net, I had the battalion intel net, I had my interceptors and analysis reportings out there. So I was listening to 5 different radios. I said, which one do you want me to plug him into, sir? He says, I don't give a, and cussed me out and put on those headsets. I said, yes, sir. So I put the headphones on, but I had one ear off so I could hear the other 4 radios I had to listen to. And so, oh man, he really I had to turn the other radios up so I could hear him with the headsets on for that one radio. And he really got upset. And then I think he came over and looked at me, and I just kind of like I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden he realized what he was doing. And yeah, it was not a very good decision there, Captain. But Mira pasada, poo-poo happens. That's mierda pasada in Spanish. That's говно является in Russian. In German, they say Scheiße stimmt. And, then we got our way of saying it here. Poo-poo occurs. Okay. So that kind of puts us where we are. 45-minute mark. We've finished the basic Constitution. Next week we will start on the Bill of Rights and see how we can do in that. Now the Bill of Rights, what happened was there was concern at the convention in Philadelphia when they drafted the Constitution. There was concern that the states would not necessarily ratify the Constitution if the first 10 amendments were inside as articles. So what they did was they first passed the first 7 sections, because it was originally going to have 17 sections, okay? So they passed the first 7 sections, had that ratified. Then later they passed around the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights were actually going to be originally, I think, 13 were going to be in the Bill of Rights, and they whittled it down to 10, because that was where some of the contention was in 3 of those others. And you can read about those in the Federalist Papers. But they passed around those 10 that they all agreed to and sent those around to the states to ratify them. And so those first 10 amendments to the Constitution became known as the Bill of Rights. And so that's what we're going to start on next week. We'll do Articles 1 through 4, and then the following week we'll do 5 through 10 probably. We'll see how far we get with that. I don't want to push it too hard, but I think there's some pretty important stuff in there. Remember that there are 5 things guaranteed in the First Amendment alone, and then understanding the preamble to the Second Amendment and what it means and the significance of it. And then there's also a lot of wording that is confusing and misunderstood in the Second Amendment. So, for example, it does not say the right to bear guns. It says the right to bear arms. And it doesn't say firearms. It says arms. So the primary weapons of defense, or arms, that were used at the time of the colonies were knives, tomahawks, and muskets and pistols. Okay, so those are arms. So theoretically, if you read the intention of the Second Amendment, there can't be any prohibition against knives, tomahawks, muskets, or rifles and pistols. So very interesting how that works. And remember that the whole reason that we wrote the Constitution and broke away was from the British. We didn't like their laws in the first place. So what was the Battle of Lexington Concord about? Well, the Battle of Lexington Concord was that they had a cannon that was left over from the French Indian Wars. The British didn't want us having cannons, basically limiting our right to bear arms. And we're going to go confiscate the cannon from the militia and take it back to Boston. And so that's basically what started the if you want to call it, the first shots fired of the Revolutionary War. It was because the British were trying to confiscate the weapons of the militia. So now put that into context when we talk about the Second Amendment and why did we write it? What was the intention? What was the history behind the thought process at that time? So a lot of that good, really important stuff we'll be talking about next week. Let me see what we got for comments. Yeah, but you see them also doing the same thing, texting each other at a date at the table. Which one is that you didn't remember there, Phioxerus? You're talking about Lexington Concord and the confiscation of the cannon? Correct. Yeah, in my interpretation, I believe that's right. It says let me get it and read it to you word for word. We'll talk about it more in depth next week. A well-regulated militia. So who's the militia? We've got two different congressional acts that define what a militia is. So that's basically any male between the age of 18 and 65. Okay, is in the and we have two different types of militias. This is very well described, and we'll talk about the militia acts next week when we go into this. I'll have that for you. I'll have screens and I'll let you read those. So a militia is any male. It doesn't say non felony convicted males. It doesn't say that. It says a male between 18 and 65. Now we have kind of expanded that to where it also now includes females. So basically any citizen between 18 and 65 is considered in the militia. Being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, period, shall not be infringed. So doesn't say hunting rifles are the only thing you're allowed to have. It doesn't say you're not allowed to have machine guns. It doesn't say you're not allowed to have cannons. It says you have the right to keep and bear arms, period. So, it's that's the way it is. Absolutely. Okay, a female in South Korea walked into the swimming pool. She could not swim, and it was winter time. She was found the next day. I saw the video, and I make sure my kids know to sit down looking at the phone. My cane's over there. I would show you my cane. It happened about 3 weeks ago. I was walking in the crosswalk from the parking lot into the grocery store. A woman was texting while driving, and going slow. I thought she was stopping, and I continued on in the crosswalk, and she got my cane and almost got my leg. And but when the cane met the front end of her car, I think it startled her to where she knew what she was doing was wrong, and she drove off really, really, really fast. I'm watching, and I'm going to forward it. I really encourage you all to do it. Right now, let me get his name. Well, I got a sama-sama back from somebody, which is Indonesian for the same to you. Let me see here. Okay, his name is Andrew Bustamante, and he's being interviewed by Canadian Prepper. I will forward that to you. He and I are in total agreement. If you read, and I've promoted it several times here, Unrestricted Warfare by the two Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy colonels. They talk about fifth generation warfare is basically what General Flynn calls it. And I worked with General Flynn. That guy has his poo-poo in one bird bag, let me tell you. And it's folded 3 times and stapled 5. So he's got his stuff together. But we are basically in World War III. And the thing is that it's being done in such a way that nobody can look at it. And we have this mindset. We think that a world war is going to be like 1 and 2. We have this mindset of Korea. We have this mindset of kinetic confrontation. What's going on over in Europe right now, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going to be happening in the very near future in South America, what could be happening in China. We've got this firm mindset of what we define as world war. And we're actually fighting a world war through proxies right now. And we're also fighting it through unrestricted warfare. And that means all these little things are happening. Chicken farms blow up. 1,000 cattle get blown up in a cattle yard in Texas. Chemical dumps, food plants blowing up, fertilizer plants blowing up, train derailments, all this different stuff. If you look at that, you say, sure does seem like we have a lot more of that going on than we used to. And at the same time, that's the whole philosophy that the colonels are talking about, unrestricted warfare. All these little things that you say, they don't match. You can't put these pieces together to say this is a kinetic war. And that's the intention, is they don't want it to look like a kinetic war. That's part of that issue. Let me get rid of some of these. Let me see. Okay, so I'm getting all kinds of warnings here. Emergency alert from New York Prepper. Sama. Okay, I can get rid of those. There we go. Whoops, let me see. Let me get rid of that. Let me get back up here to comments. I hit the wrong button. I hit private chat. I didn't want to do that. So come on. All right. I get to certain points in this, and all of a sudden I can't use anything but the cursor. What about after age 65? Well, according to the law, then you're no longer protected. But with that clause, that introductory clause of a well-guarded militia. But we can also say that that's the intention of everybody has the right to self-defense. Let me see. Why are UN helmets blue? I don't know. I think it's because that's the color of the UN flag, to be honest with you. That baby blue, powder blue flag with the white crest on it and everything else. So I think that the international blue is the color of their helmets and their equipment and all that kinds of stuff, representing that flag. So Cats and Prepping says yes about the unrestricted warfare. Hello, Scott Hummer. Welcome. So Stray Kitten says emergency alert for New York, uploading a video. Is that from you, Stray Kitten? Because if so, I'll go over there. We'll go over there and watch that. So yeah, it looks like something is going on. So that could be the start of the war between Venezuela and Guyana. Remember, we do have an airborne division down there supporting Guyana. So that could be, something that could be something. We also have Ukraine is on its last legs. So there's some. Okay, Stray Kitten, thank you. But Ukraine is on its last legs. They're something's going to happen there very soon. Israel is kicking the Crimea out of Gaza, and then of course we or Israel. What was it that happened? We took out 5 Yemeni. We took out 5 Iranian Republican guards, and at a station in Syria. So now Iran is threatening Israel over us taking out the 5 Iranian Republican guards who were attacking the U.S. base, and things are really getting crazy. Finland has closed all of its borders. Lithuania, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. Actually, it's Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania are doing the same. They're considering closing all their borders. That will close the Suwalki Gap so that Kaliningrad no longer has any ground connections between Kaliningrad, the exclave, and Russia. So that's going to be something that's concerning as well. Hello, my prepper journey. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and remember we've had we guesstimate somewhere. I'll be with you in just a couple minutes, Izzy. My 15-year-old Chihuahua wants off the couch, so I guess she can go outside. But anyhow, they guess probably about 100,000 unaccompanied military-age Chinese with good haircuts, clean clothes, have been bused to the border, and they've been allowed inside our country. So, when we start talking about the two colonels, Colonel Shi and Xing Yang, I think are the 2 colonels. And their book Unrestricted Warfare. There's roughly 3 divisions worth of Chinese infantry, at least inside our country, that can do all kinds of havoc. And then I just saw, just before we came on, that England, one of England's power plants has been hacked. And they believe that the hackers are either Russians or Chinese trying to take control over the nuclear power plant and cause some problems. So there's all kinds of interesting stuff going on. So with that, I think it's time that we go ahead and check out the news, get everybody ready. Tomorrow night, we're going to be doing the other book. We're going to be doing Nuclear War Survival Skills. Wednesday night, I'm being interviewed on Prepper Mitten, Michelle Prepper Mitten Veteran. There we go. Michelle Prepper Mitten Veterans channel at 6:30 Central. I'm going to try to get. I'm going to purchase an extended YouTube license so I can start interviewing a lot of you. I know there's a lot of great people out there with a lot of great ideas and a lot of great experience who would like to share that with others. Let's get you into this as well. I am so sorry. My lungs are really messed up. I've got to do a treatment. Wheezing up a storm. My gosh. But we'll get all that taken care of. So if you had watched Michelle Minton, Prepper Veteran, greatly appreciate that Wednesday evening. I won a prize from Nutrient Survival. She had Nutrient Survival on her channel tonight. Earlier today, I won a prize. I said, keep that prize. We'll use that as a gift for the people who show up on Wednesday. So already, if you show up on Wednesday, you know that there's a Nutrient Survival emergency freeze-dried food package waiting for somebody to win. Okay, so a little bit of assistance for my lungs, and we will start off with Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. And so remember, we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Thank you so much for being kind, polite, respectful, and loving to each other. I can't tell you how much I thoroughly admire the way you interact with each other, the way you treat each other, the way you share information, experience, ideas, recommendations with each other. You make us what we are. And I think that a lot of times the chat is just as valuable, if not more valuable than what I have to say. So thank you for allowing me to be the opportunity for you all to exchange information among yourselves. I greatly appreciate it. The reason we need to do this together is because we're going to come out the other side together. Okay. We've got to do this together. Take care, everybody. Merry Christmas to you as well. Bye-bye.